Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we tear through the most dense research and give you the essential knowledge you need to be well-informed, fast. Today we are wading into what sounds like a simple, but maybe even dry topic, literally. But it has these massive implications for public safety and the law. Walkway friction. Yeah, we're talking about tribometers. Those are the devices used by safety inspectors, flooring manufacturers, shoe companies too, I guess, to measure how slippery a surface is, usually with that coefficient of friction, or COS. So our mission today is pretty critical. We're diving into a stack of source material that reveals why these really essential safety tools often give, well, wildly conflicting results, frankly, dangerously conflicting results, and maybe more importantly, how researchers finally built the first definitive reference standard using, the most reliable measure available, actual people slipping.
Right. The underlying issue here, it's really a crisis of confidence. You just can't set a safety standard if the tools you're using to measure it don't even agree with each other. Globally, we've got, I think, over 30 different tribometer models in use, and they all have unique mechanical designs, different materials for their test feet, and they calculate COF in all sorts of proprietary ways.
30 models, wow.
Yeah, it creates this ecosystem of, well, measurement chaos. Our sources cite this earlier study that really shows how bad it is. They tested 9 different tribometers on the exact same wet surface.
And what happened?
Their COF readings, they span this almost unbelievable range from 0.06, which is like ice, dangerously slick, all the way up to 0.69, which would be considered highly slip resistant.
Wait, for the same floor?
The exact same floor, under the exact same conditions.
That's the difference between a floor being deemed totally safe and someone getting seriously hurt, all depending on which machine you grab.
Precisely. And that highlights the critical need for some kind of universal reference standard.
So that same floor could be passed by one inspector and then trigger a major safety violation from the next. I mean, that's terrifying if you manage property or design public spaces. If the machines can't agree, how do you even start to standardize safety?
Well, you go back to first principles, right? The researchers realized they needed to use the most reliable metric, and arguably the most direct one, human trials, people actually slipping. And the study was meticulously designed to strip away the variability found in previous research efforts.
Right, let's unpack these human trials. They focused on using common standard walkway materials, the kind of tiles and floors you find everywhere.
Exactly. And crucially, they focused only on wet conditions. Because our sources are clear.
Yeah.
Slips and falls very rarely happen on dry, clean surfaces. It's the wetness that's the issue.
Makes sense. So who are the participants?
They recruited 80 healthy young adults, ages 20 to 39, and they were randomly assigned to walk across one of 4 specific floor surfaces, all made wet: polished black granite, porcelain, standard ceramic tile, and vinyl composition tile, VCT.
Okay, common flooring types. And I'm picturing the setup must have been pretty intense. You need consistency in how people walk, right?
Oh, absolutely. Subjects wore standardized footwear, these Oxford-style shoes, with very specific, smooth, styrene, butadiene rubber soles.
Smooth soles. Interesting.
Yes, and they walked at a controlled mean speed, about 2.09 meters per second. But the image that really sticks out, like you said, is the safety measure. Every single participant wore a fall-arresting harness.
Yeah, you'd have to.
It's quite a visual, isn't it? 80 people walking very deliberately strapped into safety harnesses. But those controls were absolutely essential. And there was another crucial behavioral control, too. Subjects were only exposed to the test surface once.
Only once? Why is that?
Because if you walk on a slippery surface a second time, your brain, your body, you've already started adjusting your gait, maybe unconsciously. You walk more cautiously. They needed that genuine, unaware first step data.
Ah, I see. They needed the real slip data, not the sort of careful, adapted walking data. So how did they define what counted as a slip? Because, in the real world, a slip could be a tiny skid or a full-blown fall.
Good question. They used an 8-camera motion analysis system, very sophisticated, to categorize 2 very precise types of slips. And the difference between them is really important for safety and risk assessment.
Okay, what were they?
First, you have the really dangerous one, the heel slip. This happens in what's called the early stance phase. It's right when your heel hits the ground and you're transferring weight onto that foot.
Right at the critical moment.
Exactly. It involves the heel sliding forward, often quite suddenly before the rest of your body can really catch up. This type of slip dramatically increases the risk of a proper fall and potentially serious injury.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second type?
Second type is the toe slip. It's generally considered less hazardous. This happens in late stance, just before your toe lifts off the ground to swing forward.
Ah. So you're already pushing off.
Right. Your foot might slide backward just a little bit. But because you've already transferred most of your weight to your other foot by then, it's much less likely to cause a major fall.
So understanding the type of slip, not just if a slip happened, tells you a lot more about how dangerous a surface really is.
Precisely. The ratio of heel slips to toe slips is a key indicator of risk.
Okay, so that distinction, that's what built their foundation. Let's get to the results. The definitive slipperiness ranking that came out of these human trials. You said all 4 surfaces were statistically different.
Yes, statistically distinct from each other, which makes this ranking really robust.
All right, lay it on us, starting with the most dangerous.
That was polished black granite. No contest. It was definitively the most slippery surface. It caused 19 total slips across the participants who walked on it.
19 slips. And crucially...
Critically, 13 of those 19 were the high-risk, dangerous heel slips.
Okay, so granite is bad news when wet. What's next down the list?
Moving down the risk scale, we have porcelain. This landed in the moderately slippery category. It caused 15 total slips, so still quite a few.
Still significant, yeah.
But here, the ratio shifted. 11 of those 15 slips were the less hazardous toe slips. Fewer of those really dangerous heel slips compared to granite.
Got it. And after porcelain?
Next came VCT, that's vinyl composition tile. It was deemed less slippery. This surface only generated 7 total slips among its walkers.
7 slips. And the type?
Every single one was a toe slip. 0 dangerous heel slips occurred on the VCT.
Okay, so a noticeable step down in risk, which leaves.
And finally, the undisputed gold standard for friction in this particular test, ceramic tile. Standard ceramic tile.
And the result?
0 slips, none. Out of the 20 subjects who tested it wet, not a single person slipped heel or toe.
Wow. Okay, so that's a really clear hierarchy based on actual human risk.
Exactly. So we have this clear human-validated ranking. Granite is slickest, then porcelain, then VCT, and ceramic is the safest, the benchmark. This ranking became the objective test, the yardstick for the machines.
Right. So the researchers then took this ranking and basically said to the machines, can you match this?
Pretty much. They introduced 2 specific objective criteria that the 11 tribometers they tested had to meet to be considered valid.
Okay, what were the rules of the game for the machines?
Criteria number 1 was straightforward. The tribometer must correctly rank the coefficient of friction, the COF, of the 4 surfaces in the exact same order as the human slip results. Granite has to read slicker than porcelain, which has to be slicker than VCT, which has to be slicker than ceramic.
Simple ranking, match the humans. What was criterion 2?
Criterion number 2 gets a bit more technical, but it's crucial. The tribometer must be able to statistically differentiate between surfaces that have different degrees of slipperiness. Meaning, if the human trial showed, scientifically, that VCT and ceramic surfaces are genuinely different in terms of slip risk, the machine's measurements have to be precise enough, consistent enough to also prove that difference statistically. It can't just get the order right by chance. Its numbers have to show a real difference where a real difference exists.
Okay, rank them right and be precise enough to tell them apart statistically. Got it. All right, so here's where it gets really interesting, maybe a bit alarming, because the machines, well, many of them just failed this basic test of sanity, didn't they?
That's putting it mildly. Across all the devices and all 4 surfaces, the COF measurements were just all over the place. We saw readings as low as 0.05 on that slippery black granite and as high as 0.94 on the safe ceramic tile. Huge variations.
Let's go back to that wet porcelain example you mentioned earlier. The humans found it moderately slippery, 15 people slipped. What did the machines say about that one surface?
Right. For that single wet porcelain surface, the readings from the 11 different tribometers spanned from 0.19 all the way up to 0.62.
0.19 to 0.62 for the same tile. That's insane.
It really highlights the danger, doesn't it? Think about the implications. Maybe the minimum required COF for a public space is, let's say, 0.40.
Okay.
Inspector number 1 walks in with tribometer A, which reads 0.19. They'd immediately flag that floor, maybe shut it down, label it highly dangerous, below standard.
Right. Big problem.
Then inspector number 2 comes in, maybe the next day, with tribometer B. It reads 0.62 on the exact same floor. They'd say, this floor is perfectly safe, highly slip resistant, no problem here.
It makes the whole idea of having a COF safety standard completely meaningless if the tools give you opposite answers.
Exactly. It undermines the entire safety system.
So the big reveal, out of the 11 common tribometer models they tested, how many actually passed both of those validation criteria? the ranking, and the statistical difference.
Only 4
4.
out of 11.
Just 4. Only 4 of these commonly used devices could consistently tell the difference between dangerous, moderately slippery, and safe surfaces in the same way that the human trials did. Wow. So 7 failed. Yeah, that's more than half. What were the common ways they failed? Did they mostly mess up the ranking?
Yeah, most failed criterion #1, the ranking test.
Yeah.
For instance, 2 common drag sled type tribometers, the tortoise the third and the HPS, they actually got it backwards. They incorrectly ranked ceramic tile. Remember, the safest floor with 0 slips as more slippery than VCT.
They thought the safest floor was slipperier.
According to their readings, yes. The machines simply couldn't identify the safest material correctly relative to a slightly slipperier one.
That's a fundamental failure. Any other examples?
Well, there was the BOT 3000. When they used it in static mode measuring friction when it's not moving, it actually got the ranking correct.
Right.
Granite, porcelain, VCT, ceramic. So it passed criterion #1.
Oh, okay. So that one worked.
Not quite. It failed criterion #2. Its measurements for VCT and ceramic tile, while in the right order, were too close together. They weren't different enough to be statistically significant.
So the machine basically knew the order was right, but it was too imprecise, too blurry in its readings to actually prove scientifically that VCT was slipperier than ceramic, even though the humans clearly showed it was.
Exactly. It lacked the necessary precision to be useful for that kind of scientific or legal validation.
Okay, so let's flip this around and focus on the success stories. Who are the good guys in this tribometer lineup? Which 4 passed?
The 4 validated tribometers were the Wessex pendulum, the Sigler pendulum.
Okay, 2 pendulum types.
Right. And the Mark II and the Mark III. These represent 2 different operating principles that actually manage to correlate well with how humans experience slipperiness.
Tell me about the pendulum devices first. How do they work?
The pendulum types, like the Wessex and Sigler, essentially work by swinging a test foot, usually with a standardized rubber slider on it, kind of like a heel. It swings down, strikes the surface, and the machine measures how much energy the pendulum loses during that contact.
Sort of measuring how much the surface grabs the swinging foot?
In a way, yes. Less energy loss means less friction, more slipperiness. It's a dynamic measurement, trying to simulate that heel strike moment during walking.
Okay. And the other 2 winners, the Mark II and Mark III, they're called inclinable mass devices.
Correct. The Mark II and Mark III work differently. They're designed so the test foot strikes the surface at a known, controlled angle and speed, again, simulating aspects of walking.
And what was the key design feature here? Because something made these 4 work when others didn't. Was it the test foot material?
That might play a role, but what the researchers really highlighted was something specific about the Mark II and Mark III test feet. They used grooved test feet.
Grooved, like a tire tread.
Exactly like that, yes. Small grooves, maybe about 3 millimeters deep, 1.5 wide, spaced 5 millimeters apart. It sounds minor, but it seems to be a really important difference maker, especially on wet surfaces.
Why would grooves make such a difference?
Well, the hypothesis is that those grooves function much like the tread on your shoe heel. When the grooved foot lands on a wet surface, the grooves help to displace the water, sort of squeegeeing it out from underneath.
Allowing better contact between the rubber and the actual floor surface.
Precisely. A smooth test foot, on the other hand, can just hydroplane on the water film, or sometimes it can create a kind of suction or adhesion effect, which messes up the reading.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense.
And there's another point about the Mark II specifically. Its design seems to better approximate the peak impact force that happens under your foot early in the gait cycle, right when those dangerous heel slips are most likely to occur.
So it's simulating the riskiest moment more accurately.
That seems to be part of its success, yes.
And this success kind of shines a light on why the others failed, particularly those common drag sled types, like the tortoise the second and BOT 3000 you mentioned.
It does. Researchers suggest that a major issue with many drag sled tribometers is their prolonged surface residence time.
Prolonged surface residence time. Okay, break that down for me. Sounds technical.
Think of it like this. Imagine trying to slowly drag a piece of wet rubber, like maybe wet masking tape, across a smooth, wet tile. If you drag it slowly, the water and the rubber can actually form a kind of adhesive bond, right? It sticks more than you'd expect.
Yeah, I can picture that. It gets sort of sticky.
Exactly. When these drag sled devices pull their test foot across the wet surface relatively slowly, or for too long a contact period, they can experience these adhesion effects.
And that adhesion makes it seem like there's more friction than there really is.
Precisely. It artificially boosts the COF reading, so a potentially slippery wet floor might get measured as being safer, more slip-resistant than it actually is in reality when someone steps on it quickly.
Okay, so that explains why some machines might overestimate the safety of a wet floor.
It's a likely contributing factor, yeah.
So let's wrap this up. What does this all mean? What's the big takeaway here?
Well, the main conclusion of the study is actually enormous for the safety world. It means that those 4 common walkway materials, they tested the polished black granite, the porcelain, the VCT, and the ceramic tile. They can now serve as the first real, necessary, objective foundation for a global reference standard for walkway slipperiness.
We finally have a benchmark based on humans.
Exactly. We have a set of knowns. This really shifts the power dynamic in the industry. Tribometer manufacturers can't just claim their device is accurate anymore.
Right.
They can, and arguably should, use this suite of 4 materials representing different levels of slipperiness to actually validate their models against the known human slip risk standard.
Prove that your machine matches the human reality.
Yes. And maybe even more critically for people using these devices day to day, safety professionals, facility managers, flooring installers, they can potentially use these same reference materials to independently check or calibrate their individual instruments.
So they can make sure the specific machine they own is giving consistent, reliable results compared to the standard.
That's the goal, moving towards consistency and reliability across the board.
It feels like we've gone from measurement chaos to having a clear path towards clarity.
Yeah.
It's huge. And just to leave you, our listener, with one final provocative thought that builds on this whole validation problem. It's not just about the model of the tribometer. Even when a specific model, like say the Mark III, generally passes the test, that doesn't automatically guarantee safety across the board for every single device sold under that name.
That's a really crucial point.
Yeah, the authors actually mentioned this. While the specific English XL tribometer they happened to use in the main study failed, they later tested 15 other English XL devices individually.
And what did they find?
Only 5 of those 15 actually passed both compliance criteria when tested against the human standard.
Yeah.
10 of them still failed, even though they were the same model.
So massive variability even within the same make and model.
Exactly. Which raises this really important question, doesn't it? Validation seems to be needed not just for the type or model of instrument, but potentially for each individual instrument that's being used out there in the field to make safety decisions. Something to think about next time you're walking on a wet floor.